Welcome back and hello if you are new. Now, thank you so much for tuning in once again for another week. I hope you're enjoying this just as much as I am. I absolutely love lists, and I think, something as big as turning, the decade really does deserve to be commemorated. Now, kicking off this section is Elder with Reflections of a Floating World. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty kind of new to the whole idea of, post-metal, doom and sludge and all this sort of stuff. But having listened to Reflections of a Floating World, I absolutely love it. And I think the reason that it's such a fantastic album is that you always get swept away in its landscape. And even though it has, the ideas of what maybe, let's say, Mastodon brought together, it has that warming 70s feel that you would hear, with like 73 prog. It's one of the best albums to escape to, and even though it's about an hour and a bit long, you never really kind of see the time passing. And I'm really, really excited to see what Elder have planned for the future, because if it's anything like Reflections of a Floating World, we're in for a real treat. Next up is Fallujah with The Flesh Prevails. Now, I don't think I had ever heard anything like what Fallujah had put together on The Flesh Prevails. And the idea was kind of, embryonic on the Harvest wombs, no pun intended, but it was a lot more focused on the death metal aesthetic. And I think on The Flesh Prevails, Fallujah really did kind of try and concentrate on combining elements of light and dark, both musically, but also within their imagery as well. And there are so many different contrasts on here. You've got the male and the female artwork. You've got, the light and the dark, the perspective that it could be sort of going into the abyss or going into the light. And most importantly, though, this is a combination of genres that I think we're seeing more and more of, which is one of the reasons I put it on this list, because they're really kind of expanding that boundary of what progressive death metal can be. It also made really inspiring use of guitar work, and I think that, Brian James and Scott Carstairs are real visionaries in the way that they actually navigate a song, and the fact that they change the accents, with the whammy bar, really does... It's kind of, I don't know, it just makes it sound very innovative and unique. If you know anyone who's got a copy on vinyl, actually, please do send them my way, because I would love to own that on the best format. Following what I think was 5 years of absence after All We Love We Leave Behind, Converge came back with an album that is just as emotionally raw as it is ardent. Converge are potentially one of their most revealing when they get to this, melodic sort of territory, but it still has the philosophical impact of Jacob Bannon's lyrics, I think. Even though everyone often argues that Jane Doe is their masterpiece, I think with The Dusk in Us, Converge argued that there is no such thing as one good Converge album. Like, you've got You Fail Me, and then No Heroes. But then after that, you've got The Dusk in Us, Axe to Fall. They're all brilliant for their own different reasons. And I think that The Dusk in Us is potentially the most emotionally mature album, and musically mature album as well. And Converge may have written the metalcore book, but they are now more relevant than ever. Now, potentially one of the most important albums, I think, in the last 10 years of death metal, Cattle Decapitation's Monolith of Inhumanity was the record that proved that Cattle Decapitation can be big players in death metal. It showed that despite Cattle Decapitation being one of the most extreme bands out there, there was this strange accessibility to it. And not only that, but it also showcased just how limitless Travis's vocal talents really are. The most important thing though is that they were able to reach such a larger audience without sacrificing 1 inch of their sound. They're just as destructive right now when they're imminently releasing Death Atlas, which is going to be reviewed next week, by the way. And if anything, it just gets better and better because there's more emotional range and there's so much more to play with. It showed that death metal isn't necessarily within constraints anymore. And that's what I love about so many albums on this list, is that it's broken free.
Hear me, and may your spirit subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether.
Now, this was Behemoth's triumphant return following Nurgle's 5-year battle with cancer. And just as Nurgle had reaffirmation of his own spirit and his ethos, so did Behemoth. But most importantly, I think the Satanist elevated Behemoth to become true torchbearers and get them out of this pigeonholed box that they were in for Demigod, the Apostasy, and Evangelion. Behemoth still had this kind of black metal aesthetic, but for me, it's almost gone a lot more highbrow. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that incorporating the ideas of, high Renaissance art and things like that really made a difference. And particularly when you look at musically, there were incorporations of like classic rock solos. It really opened up the audience to make them more of an accessible band that is now seeing Behemoth play loads of festival stages, and big festival stages as well. But most importantly, the Satanist really saw Behemoth reach their full potential, I think. And I Loved You at Your Darkest is, again, another fantastic continuation of what we've seen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's picks. We're going to be down to the final 10 in the last 2 weeks, and I'm also going to be doing my albums of 2019 very, very soon. I've also got an interview with the Cattle Decap guys coming up, and a bunch of other cool stuff. So please do comment away, and I will have a chat with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button, and be sure to share if you can. I always appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you next week for another part of this countdown.